All right, day 5 of e-learning. We got Algebra 1-2. We're doing factoring review today. So these are all things you've seen. I'm trying to mix them up. We only got 5 examples, and I'll keep things rolling. As long as you will pause, if you have a question or something, you can always rewind and go back. Hopefully, the speed of the video, like I said, I normally wouldn't go this fast in class. I think I mentioned that in other videos. But anyhow, so here we go. Number 1, we're going to factor by GCF. Because instead of doing 24 times negative 18, we always want to look for a GCF first. We're going to see that a lot this week. So 24, 9, and 18. So does 9 go into 24? It doesn't. Even though it goes into 18, 9 doesn't go into 24 because we're trying to find something that goes into all of these. So if 9 doesn't work, the next highest factor of 9 is 3. 3 goes in 9, 18, and 24. So 3 is the number we want to factor out. Now as far as the variables go, we can, in common, whatever the smallest exponent is, just like you can check for the smallest number quickly, whatever the smallest exponent is, we can't go over that in common. So this one has 2, even though these have 4 and 5, they all have at least 2 in common, right? Now, even though this is a trinomial, we can still do factor by GCF. So we divide 3x squared basically back into all of these. Now, I could have just written this one and wrote it like distributed property, but I find students find it good, especially when there's 3 of them, to write out and see what we get. So here we get 8x to the third. We get plus 3x. 4 minus 2 is squared. And again, sorry I kind of skipped over that, but 5 minus the 2 is how we get x to the third. 4 minus the 2 is the x squared. And then over here we get minus 6. These x squareds cancel out, so we leave it like that. There's our answer. So I want to go over one factor by GCF that we did back on the first day of e-learning. So hopefully that makes sense. Email me if you have questions on that one. All right. So moving right along, we've got number 2. This time we're going to go factor by grouping, and I made this one a little bit different. AY minus BY minus 11A squared and plus 11AB. All right, so there's 4 terms. So when there's 4 terms, we want to look to factor by grouping. So we did this a lot for a few days. For 2 of the 4 days so far, we've done a lot of factor by grouping. So if I ignore that for a second, what do these two terms have in common? They only have a y in common. So whatever this GCF is, I divide back into both. So these y's cancel out, I get an a. Y into that one, those cancel out, so we get a minus b. Okay? One thing just to point out, if you write this y here, sometimes students, they'd rather write a y for both, so that way they can go and cancel them out. Like y and y cancels out, and we get an a. That's fine. It really means the same thing. When you're dividing the whole thing by something, it's like distributive property, but with a variable, with division instead of multiplication, distributive property. All right, so now we go to this. When we have a negative in the middle, we're probably going to factor out a negative here. And these, they have 11 in common, and they also have a squared and a, so they can take the lowest, so the a in common. So we're going to divide by 11a into both, negative 11a. Right? And again, if you just want to write it once, that's fine too. Negative is a positive. 2 minus the 1, we get a, which matches up with that. And then negative is negative into a positive 11, we get minus 1, and then these cancel out, and that is b. If you want to write 1b and 1a, that's totally fine, but hopefully we recognize these are the same. And finally, we end up with y minus 11a times a minus b. So, same process, just they had a bunch of variables. We've seen some of those, like I said, probably in class at different times on standardized tests, so we try to mix some of that in. Okay, so there's number 2. Factor by grouping with 4 terms. All right, so next, as you probably imagine, we need to do some trinomials, as we spent a lot of last week working on trinomials. For number 3, we're going to go where a is not 1 with a trinomial. So this one is 4x squared plus 25x plus 6. All right, so when we have a trinomial, this is where we're going to multiply a times c. We got positive 24 So we want to look at factors of 24 that combine to 25. Now we can't skip to the answer like we did on Friday. We're going to have to do, so let's see what we get. We got 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6, 5 doesn't work. Okay, so which one of those is going to combine to 25 by addition because it's plus there, 1 and the 24. Everything else is out. Now, what you don't want to do, sometimes students will try to put x plus 1 times x plus 24. Do not do that because x times x is x squared. We need 4x squared. So when a is not 1, a could be anything, and we can't skip from this to the answer. We can only do that whenever a is 1, which you'll see later on. So don't do this. All right, so we got to split it up. We got 4x squared plus 1x plus 24x plus 6. And now we've got factor by grouping. So that's what we have to do on these where a is not 1. So this one has an x in common. We get 4x. Oh, whoops. Sorry, we just get x out here. X into both of those, we get 4x plus 1. And like I said, if you want to write this as x and x, completely fine with that. This side has a 6 in common. So we factor out a 6. And we see, we can erase some of this now. 6 into that, we get 4x. 6 into 6 is plus 1. I've got my like terms, and I end up with x plus 6 times the like terms is 4x plus 1. So hopefully that's a good review reminder from what was it, day 3 of e-learning, I believe. Okay, so there's number 3. There you go. All right. One recommendation I would have, especially on this review, and anytime on the notes, especially with this one, if there's one I put up here, you can pause it, try to do the question, and then, for instance, like right now, if I write up, do the question and then see if you get it right once you see what I check. So for number 4, if I give you 30x squared minus 17x plus 2, right? So right now you could pause it, go ahead and do the question, and then see if my work matches up with what you did, just to practice that. So just one idea there. So we got factors of 60, bunches of factors of 60. We did this one last week, 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20, 4 and 15 works, 5 and 12, 6 and 10. All right, now, which one of those combines to 17? Well, we've got all positive, so that we want the one where they're both negative, right? Because negative times negative will get me a positive 60. This can be confusing. So this one's out, this one's out. Now this one is interesting, this one's out, this one could work, that one's out. So how do I decide between these two? Well, to get negative 17, I would need that to be negative. For this one, I need them both to be negative. Which one will multiply to a positive 60? This would multiply to negative. So that's wrong. That's why we want this one for sure. Now, because a is not 1, we have to go through the whole factor by grouping again. So here we get 30x squared minus 5x minus 12x plus 2. All right, and now, so from here, we're going to keep going and we get, the same pattern that we've been doing with factor by grouping several times. This will be the 3rd time now that we've done this whole process just on the review. All right, so here we've got a 5x in common, so we divide by 5x. Divide that into that, we get 6x. This into that, we get minus 1. Now, when we have a negative in the middle, we want to factor out a negative, and 2 does go into 12. So we're going to divide by a negative 2. We get 6x and minus 1 there. So we got these like terms. So our final answer here, 5x minus the 2, and the like terms of 6x minus the 1. Okay, so there you go. That one's tough. That one's a lot of work. And like I said, one suggestion I had was to pause any of these and then try it on your own and then see if you get it. And then, because a lot of them, once we get past the first couple each day, they're a lot of the same process, just different examples for you guys to go back to. All right, last one to wrap up the notes here for day 5. I believe this should be for Monday. And here we go. Last one, number 5, x squared minus 5x minus 6. So this is where a is equal to 1 for reviewing. So This time we can take not necessarily a shortcut, but we don't have to go through all the factor by grouping stuff. Should make it a little nicer. So we multiply a times c, we get -6. Now, -6 or any factors of 6 sometimes can be confusing because what happens here is both of these, again, could combine to 5. However, we want the one that subtracts to 5. And we need it to be negative, so these would have to be a negative column. This one won't work. You would get -1. This is the one we want. We don't have to do factor by grouping because a is 1. This only works when a is 1. So here we go. We get x plus 1. Sorry, the board's rattling around here. X minus 6. That is my answer. Okay? Anything with factoring, you can always go back and check and see if I were to double distribute this, would it work out and turn out into the same as the original question? Okay? So that's going to wrap it up here for factor review. Tomorrow, or sorry, for your homework, you guys have been doing a great job. Looks like people are taking their time and really trying things. I appreciate that. Keep up the good work and do the best you can with this. It's the best we can ask for you right now. A lot of unknowns, so the best thing you can do is just keep trying to make progress, doing your best, and hope you guys take care of yourselves out there, and hopefully seeing you sooner than later. Okay? All right, that'll wrap it up for today.